Here I have a little white ball. Now it's gone. I'm the master of the universe. You stupid audience shower me with applause. I think magicians need to think really hard about their relation with their audience. Which is the main point of this talk, really. Here's a magician and an object. Alexander Adrian became a magician after studying philosophy. It was because of him that I thought as a teenager that I wanted to become a magician, and that in order to become a really good one, I needed to study philosophy first. At least that I did. What catapulted Adrian to fame, particularly amongst West German intellectuals, were his publications, books and articles on the history of magic, and also on his performance philosophy. And it certainly didn't hurt that he managed to co-publish his first book with Heinrich Böll, our future Nobel laureate in literature. There's a recurring theme in Adrian's books, which brings us back to my remark about the magician's relation with his audience. According to Adrian, the magician's spectators need to play a very active role in the creation of illusions, and it is the magician's task to encourage them to become fellow playful actors in his show. Now, I have never had a chance to see Adrian perform, and so I always wondered how he realized these ideals in his shows, until I met an old lady who had actually seen him, and she could just remember one single item from his show, not a magic trick, but the object that you see on the screen, Trouble Wit, a very old paper object. We don't know why the object is called Trouble Wit, but it already goes by that name in the very first written source that we have on the object, the book Sports and Pastimes, published in the year 1676. But what is Trouble Wit really? It's a piece of cardboard in accordion folds with 4 panels that can be folded either in or out. Some shapes that you can form with it very much resemble particular objects. This book proudly proclaims that it can even resemble a mince pie without any meat in it. Now, what does such a paper object have to do with magic? Well, historically, magic is surrounded by what we might call amusements or minor variety arts, such as forming different head pieces using a brim or playing with your hands to form shadows. But also the art of regurgitation, swallowing objects and then throwing them up again for your amusement pleasure, or more unlikely in a magic show, the art of, listen closely, anal vocalization. Here we have on the right Joseph Pujol, very probably farting the Marseillaise as we look at him. Now, what does a magician do when he does not include such items in his show? I think he proves or provides fake proof that he does something impossible. For example, I can prove to you that these rings are all perfectly closed, and still I can link them. Now, therefore, I am a kind of godly figure, or at least someone handed down to the earth by the gods, a figure to whom the laws of nature are not really a hindrance, such as on this beautiful poster by Changling Su. So with trivial things like rings, playing cards, and pieces of rope, I create, by proclaiming myself someone for whom the laws of nature do not hold true, I proclaim myself to be someone who actually just exudes superiority, and then we have this tug of war between the magician and his audience. Now, wise magicians like Alexander Adrian, they have tried to find strategies for that adversarial relationship between the audience and the magician. Here we have Cardini, famous magician in the first half of the 20th century, who plays a bumbling gentleman who really wants to achieve one thing, but a very different thing happens. And so we laugh at those things happening rather than trying to figure them out. And here we have a different strategy, including puzzles like the one on the slide. Puzzles or little playthings or things like Trouble Wit. Including them in the show may help to show the audience that there's actually a playfulness in magic, and that your task as a spectator is not really to figure the trick out. Now here we have Trouble Wit, And I think the reasons I have just mentioned are exactly the reasons why it ended up in the repertoire of magicians and why they donned crazy hats like you see on these slides here. And I think this was the very reason why Alexander Adrian incorporated trouble wit in his shows. He wanted to exude a certain playfulness that would undermine that adversarial relationship between himself and his audience. Here we have a couple of objects that magicians would typically form with trouble wit, and they would, in all likelihood, have some rhyming patter that they would recite, some satirical text going from, you just saw it, from a baby bath to a proper paper frying pan. Now what you see here is, well, I should say for the last 4 slides, I tried to convince you that trouble wit is actually going to be the next rock and roll in the performing arts, if you still had any doubts. I showed trouble wit to Émilie Gallier, a choreographer, who is also here, and we both thought there surely must be more to this than the crazy hats. And so during a residency at Cloud Dance Lab The Hague, we experimented with different sizes and materials, folding techniques, cutouts to influence the stability of the object, and first and foremost with the many possibilities that the object has for moving in space. Here you see pictures from a tentative presentation that we gave, but we really want to turn this into a production in which we reimagine the possibilities of this 300-year-old object, and a production in which our spectators hopefully are going to play an active role. Now, 100 years ago, many performers would close their performance with one and the same image, which you see here. And which you see here. And they would say, "It's already past my bedtime." This is a candlestick, if you hadn't noticed. And they would walk off and they would say, "Good night."